Welcome to the Blueprints podcast, where we uncover the real stories behind building a business, a life, and a legacy. I'm Isabelle.
And I'm Michael. This is your Blueprint.
Today, we're going to give you the blueprints for the legal foundations in starting your business. So, Michael, welcome. Excited to have you here and have this conversation.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the start of Custom Built and the legal foundations. I know there's a lot when people start a business and it can be confusing and there's a lot of information out there. So let's talk about what you did today and some of the advice that you have for upcoming entrepreneurs.
Yeah. So where we're at today and where we were at 25 years ago, it's a big difference.
Yeah.
But one of my early on books that I read, entrepreneurial books that I read, was called Rich Dad Poor Dad. And if you haven't read it, it's a pretty fun read. And he actually had developed a game, kind of like Monopoly, but it was all about, owning businesses and getting out of the rat race. And so
the rat race.
You guys remember that?
Oh, we used to play that a lot.
Yeah, taught you a lot about profit and loss statements and balance sheets and all of those things that, when you're thinking about getting in business, there's a lot to know.
Yeah.
But what I will encourage you, if you're getting started, don't get too caught up in the weeds. And what I learned was, unless you want to, a lot of people love to. And in today's day and age, it's a lot easier than it was 25 years ago when there really wasn't an internet or it wasn't working very fast. It was real slow. And
now you can go into ChatGPT and ask it to give you a business plan.
Yeah.
It's
right.
a different world.
And ask it which way should I set up? Should I do an LLC, an S Corp, or a C Corp? Those are kind of the three common, or limited partnerships, or another one that is used. But what I would say is worth your money is to find a local attorney and give them a little bit of insight in what you're doing. Also, an accountant. So again, in this book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, he talks a lot about hiring having 5 key professionals to help you as you develop your business.
Yeah.
But so much of it depends on where you're at, and like the legality of setting up a business is just making sure that you are, properly, set up so that your taxes, and so that, you don't get in some trouble down the road, because it's usually not going to be initial trouble that you're going to find. It's going to be down the road that, hey, you didn't set it up, you're not paying your taxes properly, and now you're out of business. And now that does happen to a lot of people because they don't set it up right, or they end up, with non-compliance of their documents, or they're not congruent, and there's issues as they're growing their business.
You mentioned the 5 key professionals when you're setting up your business. What are the other 3?
Yeah, so you have your attorney, which is important in getting your structure set up. You have your accountant, who's going to help make sure that's congruent with your legal structure. It's always good to have a good banking relationship, depending on what you're doing. If you're a solopreneur, probably not as necessary, but you do want a place where you can have a checking account and put your money in deposits and all that kind of stuff. And then insurance agent. This is one that is overlooked, I think, a lot, but having a good insurance agent, somebody that can make sure you get the right kind of coverage, not too much, not too little, and then help advise you based on your business. And then the last thing would be a financial advisor. And I found that to be important early on, not as important as maybe the other ones, but as you get profitable, as you start to have, you need more of a strategy and how to build your business. But a financial planner can be really helpful as kind of like the big picture quarterback, and helping you make sure that you're building a strategy that helps you to build a company that maybe someday you're going to sell, or at least have an exit strategy. I think a financial planner can be really helpful in that regards.
Right. And then as you grow, lean into that relationship, find somebody who really fits well and can work with you to, work on your goals.
Yep. And if you're a solopreneur, it's probably more just like, what is your strategy? And if you're a business owner, you're not only your strategy, but you got to have a strategy for your team. How are we going to, like we have a simple plan, or like an IRA plan for our company, so having something established and in place, they can help with that.
So tell me about the 3 different legal structures when you're setting up your business.
Yeah. So there's the probably the simplest and easiest is an LLC. And then you have an S corporation and then a C corporation. So an LLC is going to be the easiest, probably the most flexible, good for smaller businesses, solopreneur type businesses would fall under this. And that's, when I originally started buying real estate,
Yeah.
set up, LLC. Now there's even strategies where if you bought multiple different pieces of many real estate, people put each LLC or each property into a separate LLC. So again, there's strategy there to help protect your assets. If something were to happen to one property and get sued, they can't sue the rest of your properties. So
and then even depending on the type of business you have, obviously with building, like you need to be, your LLC needs to be based in the state you're in. But if you have more of an online business, you can even look at what state do you want your LLC to be based in?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's more nuances there.
Yep. And there's a lot of legal theory and piercing the corporate veil and all that kind of stuff that LLCs were supposed to be, I think, some of that stuff there's been cases where it's, you're not 100% protected, but just the name of it is limited liability, company. So it's supposed to limit your liability as you're setting in. So all of this, I would say, is as you're setting up a business, you are just trying to minimize your exposure. Because here's what I would say to you and to entrepreneurs out there. You're taking on a lot of risk. If you're just making a living and you're not like building wealth, it's a lot of risk. It's, my first years and many years of my business, like I would have been better off having a job, a good job, good paying job. In some cases, a low paying job would have been better than owning my own business. So as you're building your business, you want to minimize your exposure, because when you are profitable, and then you're not set up properly, you could risk losing all of that profitability. And you had all those years that you didn't make any money, or you worked. I had years probably I worked for $5 an hour, running my own business, because I just worked so many hours. And, the year of the crash and many years after that, like it was difficult, in our industry. And I didn't find a way to make it really profitable. And all of that was for me, right? I use that term a lot. Everything happens either to you or it happens for you. And when you accept that everything happens for you, it's for you and then through you. So as I go through difficult times in my life and I can receive what happens from the outside as something that was for me, everything in my life happened for me. And I think a lot of times when you're setting a business up, you are optimistic. You have to be. If you thought that you were going to get sued the second day in business and it was a real high probability, you're probably not going to get in business. So some of this stuff, kind of can put you to sleep or get you like fearful, depending on your personality type. For me, it's just like, come on, let's go. Bottom line it. Get me set up, and a good attorney, though, is going to educate you, because they want you to understand why you're setting up this type of a entity, why you're using an S corp over a C corp, and so, and those are the other two, an S corp, and that's what we are, is we're an S corporation, and there are some real advantages for saving on taxes with an S corp, versus a C corp. A C corp is more for like if you're trying to go public, or you're really you have a large organization, more than 100 employees, I think. And maybe there's some cases where a C corp is good when you're less than 100 employees, but I think as your venture capital type businesses where you're really trying to, I think there's reasons why you would have a C corp for that. But again, I say find a good attorney, get yourself a great accountant. If you can find a good banker in town, put together, have an insurance person put together a good insurance plan. And then the last thing is have a good financial planner. I think you're going to have a foundation that's going to allow you to build and expand your business for a long time and really help you have a good, solid foundation.
Yeah, that's good. And then what about on, I'm thinking of the builder's license that you have and like some of the specific state regulations that Michigan has. So let's talk about that. I mean, when you got into business, did you know about all of that stuff? Did you have that all figured out? Like, what did that process look like?
Of course I didn't. So I bought houses, bought my own houses, and actually in the state of Michigan, you can legally work on your own houses and not have a builder's license. So you can go pull your own permits. And so as long as you're doing it on your own property, but as you go out and you want to work for a homeowner and you want to sell something, you not only have to have a builder's license in the state of Michigan, but you also have to have a salesperson's license to sell anything in the state of Michigan. So legally, you want to make sure that you have those two pieces in place. And so, no, I did not have my builder's license when I originally started buying houses. Once I started custom built, I did, get my builder's license, and that was an important piece. And then you also, along the way there, the state changed the law and then required me to have a salesperson's license as well. So you have another test that you have to take. And ultimately, I mean, it's good education, and it helps us have a industry that's better.
Yeah.
I think that's the idea. By having some regulations can really help. Too many regulations can squelch, That's just some sort of balance is good to have. But yeah, you're going to need to have a builder's license, and yeah, you're going to need to have a salesperson's license. And so if you're getting ready to start your business, make sure you're doing that. And it's much more work today to get a builder's license, than it was 25 years ago. It was still hard to get your builder's license, but you got to have more hours in and things like that. So of hands-on training and things. So.
Yeah. Well, I know that when somebody starts a business, it can be overwhelming to go through all of the legal stuff. And you even mentioned, like, for you, it's like, you're like, okay, bottom line it, like, this is making me fall asleep. But what would you say to the entrepreneur looking to start? Like, how would you navigate that? What advice would you give them?
My advice would be to find a good attorney. You're going to spend a little bit more money setting it up, but it's a foundational thing. Even though you can use ChatGPT, it's not always exactly right, or there's little nuances. So having a attorney that can guide, kind of guide you. Certainly, you can use the internet and there's forums out there, and you can easily set it up yourself. But in my opinion, having that relationship where you had a attorney set up your original organization, and a good attorney is going to love that and going to love to grow along with you, and so having somebody in your on your team over the years that you can call up and say, hey, I got this issue, and they can help you with it. Maybe it's a industry issue, maybe there's something that you need help with, maybe you have a legality thing that something comes up. Having an attorney to help you is really going to be critical in your success long term.